Happy macOS Mojave Day. The new operating system 10.14 was released, and this is one of their backgrounds. And it is later in the day, so you can see the sun is setting over the desert. Well, today I got a unique question that I was curious about because I had not heard this as an issue, but it's related to captions inside of Final Cut Pro 10. So here's what happened. I've exported a video here, and it's on the desktop. It's just my little intro video from the YouTube channel. If you've watched the trailer, you've seen it. And if I open up this one, I'm going to drag it down and open it up into QuickTime. You can see here's the video in QuickTime. I'm going to lower the audio all the way down. And you'll notice I have this little button on the right side, which is my captions. And it's set up to show, in this case, subtitles or captions as our English closed captioning track there. So playing the video, you can see here's the caption track showing up perfectly as I've designed it and created it inside of Final Cut Pro 10. However, here's the problem that I've run into. If I go down and open up the same video into VLC, which is another very popular media player, if I open up this video in VLC, which I think this is the first time I'm opening up in this chapter, let me go ahead and mute this and do the same thing. I'm going to go up to the menu bar in VLC, and there's a subtitle menu. You'll notice for Subtitle Track, it's grayed out, meaning there's no subtitles on this video, or at least VLC can't see those subtitles. And I dug around a little bit because this is a question that someone had, and they reached out to me to try and figure out what's going on, and I dug into this, and I'm sure there's other ways out there to resolve this, but this is one way that I saw to fix this, and it is not an easy way to fix it. We have to go into another application. It's a mess. So let me take you through these steps, and if you're watching this and you know a better way of getting our subtitles so they can be viewed inside of the VLC player from Final Cut Pro 10, please leave a comment, direct me into the right steps. I would love to know a better way to do this. But we're actually going to use Davinci Resolve, which is a free application that you can download from the website. If you just do a search, it's Davinci Resolve. Right now it's version 15, and it's made by Blackmagic Design, so it's on their Blackmagic website. But if you go all the way down to the bottom, or actually at the top there's a download button too, but if you go all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see the two versions here. And there is a paid version that's $2.99, but everything I'm going to show you here we can do with the free version. And Davinci Resolve is a robust tool. It has got a lot of really cool features, and if you're a video editor, I would strongly recommend learning about this application because you could use it to replace Final Cut. If you don't like how Final Cut works, a lot of times people like Davinci, and that's another one you can use. But we're going to use it in this video, and let me show you what I've done. So on the desktop, I've exported the video from Final Cut Pro 10. So here's the project. It does have the caption track. And what I did is simply go up to share, and I shared the video as a master file. And the reason I did that is sharing it as a master file then takes everything that I've done to this video and compresses it down into one file. So if you think of all the effects on the right side here when I was color correcting the video, or if I did any editing to this video, by exporting it, it makes it all one track, and I don't have to worry about losing any information. Yes, it is true, you could go up to File and export an XML file, which is essentially a text file of all the edits and a list of everything you've done, and you can actually import that into Davinci Resolve to then continue editing. But in this case, if all you're trying to do is add the subtitle track so that it stays with the file so we can watch it in VLC, we're going to export this file, and I did it as a master file. You could export it into different format if you want, but I recommend doing it as master file. And then once that the QuickTime file is exported, it's then time to open up Davinci Resolve. And again, I'm only showing like the bare minimum here of what you would do in Resolve. You can go through and spend a lot more time learning Resolve and doing extra steps to make your video maybe look a little bit better. But for a quick run-and-gun solution, this is what I found. So we're here in Resolve. I'm going to hit at the bottom this new project button. You'll want to name your project. So in this case, it's my trailer. So I'm just going to put trailer. And then we'll hit create. And that creates the project. That's fine. We'll hit OK. Let's see if it does it. There we go. And then here we are in Resolve. And just a very basic overview of what you'll need to know here in Resolve. At the bottom, you kind of have different areas or different rooms that you go through with the Resolve editing process. Unlike Final Cut, where you're just in the interface and you kind of do everything either in the inspector or on the timeline. In Resolve here, we have these different areas. So the only ones we're going to deal with are the edit area here, or room, and then we're going to deliver or export that movie out when we're done with it. So the first step we need to do is import our file in, which you can do Command-I on the keyboard or File, Import Media. And we want to import that video that we'd exported onto the desktop, our master file. I'm going to hit Open. It lets us know here that the project has a different frame rate. You do want to press Change here. This will match up the project settings with our clip that we're editing in or bringing in. And then we're going to just click and drag this down onto our timeline. Unlike Final Cut Pro, which has the magnetic timeline, Resolve here doesn't have a magnetic timeline, and it has more of a traditional timeline. So if you drop this video over on the right side, you are going to have an area of black at the beginning. So you can just click and drag that video, make sure it is up against the beginning of your video track there. So that's great. We have the video. Now we need to get the captions into Davinci Resolve. And again, this too, there may be an easier way. If there is and you know it, please put it in the comments, let me know. I've dug around a little bit, but the less digging I have to do, the better. And we're going to get these captions from Final Cut as well. So I'm going to go back into Final Cut, and we see we have the captions here. So I'm just going to export them by going up to File, and there's an Export Captions option here. So here's our captions. I'm going to make it a little bit easier, just so I know that these are for this video. If you've watched any of my other videos, I strongly recommend naming everything. If everything has names that aren't relevant, it doesn't help you. So we're going to name our captions there. We're going to export them. It exports almost immediately because it is a text file. And then we need to get those into Resolve. And as far as I've seen here, when you go into the import option in Resolve, if I can get my menu bar to come back down, maybe a little glitch inside of Mojave, but we go to File, there's an Import File option, and there's Import Subtitle. And what you'll see here is if I go to the desktop, this one, the .scc file that I just exported from Final Cut, is not selectable. It's not one that we can use. So what I found is we have to convert these somehow. And luckily, if you go online here and just do a search for, I believe, Subtitle Convert, if I did Converter, there we go, Subtitle Converter. There's different tools online here that you can go and find to do these converters. I believe this is one we'll try. Yeah, this is the one I had used earlier, and it seemed to work really well. Again, I'm just using the first thing that comes up. Please do some research, find out what works best. I don't know what rules there are on this one, or if this one's going to be here when you go to upload and convert these, but I found this works really well. So I just hit upload. I select from the desktop. I'm going to select my .scc caption file that came out of Final Cut. And I just found doing the first ones, the .srt or subrit file seemed to work, and then I'll hit convert. And almost instantly, because it is a text file, it converts that, and it's going to put it into our downloads folder. So let me go into downloads. I'm going to put this on the desktop just to make everything here easier. Okay, so now we have a converted subtitle or captions file. And if I go back into Resolve, I'm going to do import subtitle. Select the desktop, and you are, I forgot this. You're probably going to run into this too. You notice it's still grayed out, and here's the reason it's grayed out. I'm going to go back to the desktop. This, for whatever reason, when you download these files, it adds the .txt extension on top of all of our other ones. Just delete the .txt extension. That way it's just .srt. And then it's going to say, are you sure you want to do that? And yes, we do want to use the SRT extension. I did find some people had an issue with that. If you select the file and do Command I or File Get Info, you can then go to the More Info, the name and extension part, and you can change it on here. And sometimes that lets you do it if you can't change it on the desktop for whatever reason. Okay, so back in Resolve, now if we go up to, it's giving me that nice glitch again, up to File, Import Subtitle. We'll go to the desktop. There is our Subtitle Track.srt. It is selectable now, so I can hit Open. It puts it on the left column here. I'm just going to click and drag this onto the timeline. And notice we get a nice subtitle track here, and it has all the subtitles. And I can drag them exactly where I want them to go. Here's the problem with this. I don't know exactly where to position those subtitles. So what I recommend in this case is switch back to Final Cut Pro. Notice here, our files, our caption here, the hello and welcome, that one starts right about here. So it starts at, what is that, like 117. I'm looking right in the middle at our timecode viewer. So yeah, 118 we'll say. So switching back to Davinci Resolve, I'm going to click on any one of the captions. Then I'm going to do Command A on the keyboard to select everything. I'm going to hold Command and actually click on these two to get rid of that so that just the subtitles are selected. And I can now drag this and put it exactly at the 118 mark just to line everything up to the right spot. I know if you're following along that you're kind of like, what? If you're getting confused, there are a lot of little steps like this. But trust me, all these little steps, you can go through and do these and you'll mess up and maybe forget this. You'll swing back around and hopefully find where you're missing out. But by doing this, I've now lined up the captions exactly where they were lined up in Final Cut. And I could go through and play this just to verify everything looks the way that I would expect them to. But I'm pretty confident that they're in there the way I want them to. So the video is ready to go. So now it's time to export or share this out. So let me move this back up. The bottom, this is where we switch over from the edit room to the delivery room at the end. We're going to go to deliver. And this is Resolve, so again, it's a little messy if you're comparing it to Final Cut and used to that workflow. This is going to look confusing, but it's all the same. You're doing the same stuff here. So the file name is going to be the name, and again, top left corner here, we're exporting it. So this is what the exported file is going to be. So this is, again, my trailer, so I'm going to call it my trailer, and we're doing it with subtitles. And let me get a space in here. Location is where you want to save that file. So I'm going to save it onto the desktop with subtitles. If I get it right. There we go. Add that extra T in there. And yeah, and then below here, these are just all the different options you would select as far as the format, the codec, how you want to actually export this video file out. So a lot of people like to use H.264 for delivering the file. If you want maybe a little higher quality, you can go H.265, but might not be as compatible. You could also use Apple ProRes. Those are ones that if you're coming from Final Cut should look familiar. You might have seen those. So I want a little bit better quality. I'm going to choose Apple ProRes. I'm going to do just 422. It is the right resolution and frame rate that I would expect. And now at the bottom here, this is the most important step as far as the reason we're coming here into Resolve is to get our subtitles in. So you'll want to open up the subtitle settings and enable the export subtitles. And the format and export as is very important. So we don't want it as a separate file. We want it to be embedded captions. If you burn it into the video, that means it's always going to be on the screen. So if you are trying to create a file that is just for someone that's going to be using those captions or subtitles, you could burn it into the video, and then they won't have an option to be able to turn those off. They'll just always see those. But in our case, I want to embed it. That way I can give the person, whoever's viewing this, the option. If they want to enable it, they can. If not, they can turn it off. So I'm going to say as embedded captions. And then you do get an option for codec. And our problem is the 608 codec is what Final Cut was using. And VLC just didn't see that one. So we actually want to keep this as text. So that's everything that you have to do in there. Then we're going to add it to the render queue. And what that does is on the right side here, we can see there's our trailer. It's the first timeline that we had here, and it's going to export it to the desktop. Awesome. I'm going to say start render, and now it's exporting that file out or rendering that file to the desktop. It does do this kind of sequentially. You can see the playhead there. That's where it's at in the export or the render. So depending on how long your video is, this is something that might take a couple minutes. If your computer is very fast, it might go in a couple seconds. My computer here is a pretty basic iMac, nothing too special. So it's going pretty average speed, I would think. But if you have a long video, say you are working on a feature-length film that's 2 hours long and you have captions, this is something you'll probably want to start it. Go get some coffee, go get a meal, come back, or maybe go to sleep and wake up the next day and it'll be done. But otherwise, in our case, it just finished, so it's shared that, it's rendered that out. I see it's completed. I did, in some testing earlier, I did find that if your captions are not compliant, if there's any issues with the captions, you might go to render it and you'll get an error. And it's not very clear, unlike Final Cut where it says exactly which caption's giving you the error. In here, I found it doesn't do that. Again, I could be missing something, but if that is the case, you might want to go back to Final Cut and make sure that your captions are meeting the requirements and are validating correctly over there. Okay, otherwise, this is rendered out. That is ready to go. So on the desktop now, I have a new file here that is my one with captions. So let's open up these, and I'm going to open up first in QuickTime. And let me mute these down. So this is the one on the left here is from Final Cut. The one on the right here is from Resolve. And what we see if let me make sure they're both muted. They are. Let me play them. If I go up and do my English captioning, you could see visually we have some changes on them. The one on the right that came out of Resolve does look a little bit different as far as its positioning and the way it's formatted that text. So that's something to be aware of, is that Resolve handles those captions differently than what Final Cut does on the left. But otherwise, it's the same. You can enable or disable it. You have that option there for those captions. So that's what it looks like in QuickTime. Now let's open up those same files in VLC. So I'm doing open with VLC, file open with VLC. Sure, we'll check for updates. I got them muted this time, so that's perfect. And okay, we'll just do one at a time. So this is again the one from Final Cut Pro, the original one. If I go up to the Subtitles menu, Subtitle Track, there is no Subtitle Track. And that's the problem that we're trying to resolve. So if we go to the one now with subtitles, I'm going to do open with VLC. Let me make this a little bit smaller here just to see it already. You can see the subtitles down at the bottom there already showing on the video. But if I go up to the VLC menu, to the subtitles menu, you'll see there is a subtitle track. And this is the whole point. We can disable this track if we don't want to see the subtitles, which now they're not on there. The captions aren't at the bottom. Or I can go up to the subtitle menu, track, and say track 1, which is our English track. And there we see the subtitles. They're there. We see them. VLC recognizes them, understands that they're there. And you can now send this out to someone who needs to be able to play it in VLC, but also see those captions there. Okay, so that is the whole process. Obviously, it is a little convoluted if you're not used to using other applications and having to go out there. Most of my videos, I try to keep everything in Final Cut and using less tools. But this is a case where I found that going out to Resolve and using that to use the feature as far as being able to embed these in a way that VLC can see them was the answer. So what do you think? Is that something that you've done? Do you have a better way to do it? If you do or have any tips in this process, please put them in the comments. I always like to improve what I'm doing. And if there is something that I can help out with or a question that you have, don't hesitate to send it my way. Don't hesitate. You can use my email, finalcutprohelp@me.com. And that's all I have for you right now. I hope you're enjoying the rest of the tips here in September. This is not one of those tips. This is just a separate video. But otherwise, tune in tomorrow for another tip. And if you have updated to macOS Mojave, which we're seeing on here on the background. I hope you're enjoying it. It is a 0.0 release, so if you're seeing any glitches, any weird things, don't hesitate to email those over to me. I wouldn't recommend updating if you're in the middle of a giant project or you're not used to troubleshooting machines. Maybe not the best thing to do right now. But if you are excited about the new version, create a nice backup, maybe create a separate partition, install it, try it out before you dive right in. Otherwise, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day or night, whatever time of day it is on your desktop. I hope you're enjoying it. Thanks, everyone.